O Z Y W O M B podcast. I'm Shan.
I'm Aria.
Say Ari.
Abby.
Welcome to Cozy Womb Podcast. Let's go.
Say what?
Hey, it's Shan, and this is Cozy Womb Podcast, and I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend. I just really wanted to share my watch of When They See Us. Man, it's on Netflix. I suggest you watch it. I know you're seeing it on Twitter. I know you're seeing it on your Facebook timeline. I know if you have Netflix, it's coming up as a Netflix original to see. You need to see it. If you have any kids, I don't care what culture you are, where you come from, you need to see it. If you live in the United States, you need to see it. If you don't live in the United States, but you do business with people who live in the United States, you need to see it. If you have any brown or quote-unquote black kids in your family, or your kids have them as friends, you need to see it. When I tell you Ava and these actors who acted in the best regards did their best work with this documentary, it was amazing. I watched it at 1 a.m. this morning, and I think I finished it around 3:30. Yes, I went through the emotions of being clueless as to what she was going to show. Now, mind you, I watched a documentary of this, I want to say about 3 years ago, of the story, true story of 5 boys in New York, young boys that were in the park with like 30 other kids. And around the time of them being in Central Park, a rape occurred. And because the police were called, a lady was found, they focused on brown and black boys that were in the park at the time, and they just picked them out by age. And they ended up gathering 4 boys, and the 5th boy just ended up being a friend of one of the boys that just wanted to follow his friend to the precinct, and he got caught up in it. Had nothing to do with it. None of the boys had nothing to do with it. They were basically going to the park to hang out with friends and listen to music. Very usual of what young boys do in a city like New York in those times where, Public Enemy was around, hip-hop was alive and well and breathing and pumping through the streets of New York. Normal. They ended up being coerced into admitting to raping a white woman at that time, and they had nothing to do with it. They didn't even know this white woman was in the park. They were in a completely different area of Central Park at the time of this rape, and because the police and the prosecutor at the time and everybody in that police department did not want to do the work in order to actually find the rapist at the time that brutalized this woman and, had it to a point where she couldn't remember a lot of it. They blamed these boys, these young boys, and the way that they talked about them, how they called them animals, and they say they were parading in the park and bothering cyclists and just trolling a park looking for trouble when that wasn't even the case. And it was just a lot of racism, a lot of hate. And it was one thing to watch them mistreat these young boys and talk to them while their parents were in the room and hit on them and talk to them for hours and refuse to let them leave and threaten them and use names of blame against one in order to make up a story to get the other person. It was so unbelievably hateful that as a mother, as a aunt, where I have nephews and nieces, where this could have been one of them, it made me so angry. And the parents that, felt pressured and also blackmailed into making their sons admit to something that they didn't do, and the way that these police wrote up fake reports of what they admitted to, and one of them couldn't even read well. It was so sad, and I spent all this morning crying, being angry, being hopeful, crying, being angry, being hopeful, and it just showed the ripple effect of what that case did, and how if you haven't watched it, I'm sorry, I'm busting your bubble, but just how they had no DNA proof, how there was proof that the police department were making these kids lie, how these tapes were given, how these boys made up details in order to make it good for the police so they could let them go home. That was the whole goal in these young boys' minds. They wanted to go home, and it's nothing logical that an adult is going to know, where if I admit this, they're definitely not going to let me go home. Let me just sign my name on this paper. And it's just a whole bunch of taking advantage of children and young lives, where you saw the ripple effect of what it did to their parents and what it did to relationships and families, and how a lot of the families didn't have a lot of money and they couldn't hire the best lawyers, and one of them had a divorce lawyer to fight for them in the case, and how the state of New York purposely gave them a judge that was known to award cases to the state anyway, and send the boys to Rikers. And it was disgusting how this unfolded, and how the city of New York couldn't believe that, these boys would have done that, and how they just took advantage of these boys, stole years of their lives, how their family had to struggle to go see them, how they were being mistreated, especially one of the boys, Corey, who had nothing to do with it. None of them had anything to do with it, but he wasn't even wanting to be there. He just wanted to follow one of his friends, Yusef, to the precinct because he wanted to make sure he was cool. And they took him in the room, beat him up, and forced him to say that he was there. And it was just so messed up how they mistreated him and beat him up in the jail, and how the prison guards took advantage of him, and how he was abused and talked down to, and he didn't really have time to bond in his young teen years because of that. And his education wasn't the best, because before the trial he wasn't really going to school. He had issues at reading, and he was just in the jail basically losing it, because if he was in general population, a lot of the other prisoners would beat him up. The prison guard was taking advantage of him. Then if he went to infirmary from being beat up so bad, they would take that as he's snitching. So the best thing he could do is go into solitary confinement, which is a smaller cell in the dark, small window at the top, a cot. The only time the door opens is for him to go in and out to go somewhere, or for his food to be given to him. And it was just, him going through the motions, and him having conversations with himself, imagining how he was somewhere else. It just really shows you that we still have a justice system that's messed up, full with a lot of gaps that we need to fill. It just shows that Ava had the guts to go ahead and show the truth of how brown kids in this country are continuously mistreated, how the system does not serve them, how they take advantage of families that don't have much, how putting fear and abusing and putting your hands on a brown or black boy or girl is looked at as not a big deal here. And we aren't classified as being deserving of better treatment. It's just like whatever. and it shouldn't be that way. And unfortunately, it is still that way. And, when people have family members that go to jail and do time, it's not just the ones that are physically in jail doing time. It's the mental, emotional, and physical family members who are extensions of that person that do that time also, because they have to deal with how can they be supportive when they can't physically touch that person or physically take that person somewhere to be happy. How can they keep in touch when they can afford to travel hundreds of miles outside of New York City to go see them at whatever prison they're at? How can they really understand what's going on in that prison with their brother, their sister, their nephew, their son, if that child is so afraid to speak up and tell the truth? And the main thing throughout this documentary that got these boys in this trouble was the fact that they told a lie in order to give a good story for these police, and it was not true. They had nothing to do with this rape. And what Ava did is show the true rapist that ended up confessing to this rape, and all the evidence was there, and how he easily walked through Central Park with blood all over his shirt and this lady's Walkman, and no one suspected him for years, and he confessed. And that's what got these kids off. And when they came out of there, they were men, and it showed how society still had prejudice towards them because of what their name was and what was said about them years ago, and how they couldn't get the jobs that they needed, and how they were they felt pressure to change who they were, so people want to identify them as those boys. And most of them now do live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is ironic and funny to me, because after they got that settlement and their records were wiped clean, most of them moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and they were awarded, I think it was like 41 million from New York State, and I guess they split it between them, and they started businesses, and I guess they're doing pretty well for themselves. But you can only imagine the mental and emotional strain on them, and the therapy that maybe they may still go through, or what they think. And I don't care what you do, if it's your son, if it's your cousin, if it's your nephew, if it's your brother, if it's your sister, teach your kids to tell the truth. No matter how crazy the truth may sound, it's the truth. No matter who's not going to like you if you tell the truth, it's the truth. No matter how mad an adult may get if you tell the truth, or how scared you may be if you tell the truth, you tell the truth. Because anybody can make up a lie all day. But if the truth is the truth is the truth, everything is going to fall into place, and they're going to see that. So there's no loopholes in the truth. You know what I'm saying? Everything falls into place when it's the truth. And I just wish all the police and the prosecutors that were in there at that time pushing these boys to lie for the sake of having a good story or being able to close a case would have gotten that jail time. At least 20 years, no parole. Like they would have been able to do some time to get a better understanding of what it was like to be away from their families, and what it was like to be somewhere that's uncomfortable, and in a space where you couldn't do what you want, you couldn't have choices, and you were being looked at a certain way. Because there's no justice in just paying kids off that are now men in society and cannot do what they wanted to do. You cannot pay somebody for years missed of living. You can't pay somebody for time missed from loved ones who have passed on, and life changes so much in a year, let alone 5 years, let alone 10 years, 14 years. It was sick how much these boys went through and came out as men and had to still deal with society looking at them a certain way and judging them, and them not feeling like they had a place, and them not feeling like they fit in anymore. And I don't know. I hope that you teach your kids to stand up for themselves, and I hope that you teach your kids their rights, and that as a parent, never feel like a police officer, a judge, a lawyer, or anybody on the street just because they come from money or they are in a certain job, that whatever they say goes when it comes to your children or your life or your family. You stand up for your family, and if you know that you taught your son or your daughter right from wrong, and you know in your heart that they didn't do something, never feel pressured for them to cave, or never feel pressure for them to change a story for the sake of being able to get off or go home or not cause a problem. Stand up for your kid. You don't get that same kid more than once. You don't get time back. And a lot of relationships were ruined because these children did time, and a lot of these parents couldn't really stand up and protect these children like they should have. There is nothing that I want to do for my kids. Nothing. And you could take that in a good way, and you could take that in a bad way. There is nothing that I want to do for my kids. But I would never have any of my kids lie for the sake of someone else benefiting. I would never make my kid lie for the sake of my ego or my pride. I would never make my kids lie for the sake of someone else feeling better or not feeling like they're going to get in trouble, or taking up for a friend, or whatever that street code shit is. I don't live in the street. You know what I'm saying? And my kids' lives mean a lot to me. My kids having opportunities and being their best means a lot to me. So when it comes to who's around them and my friends and my family and the friends that they will get over time throughout life, I will always make sure that it's in the positive light and not a negative light. Okay? But I suggest y'all watch that. When They See Us is great. The music that was all throughout that show was fantastic. I been listening to a lot of new artists that I haven't heard through it. A lot of the songs I did know, but look up the soundtrack to that show. It's pretty good. It's not very long, but episode 3 and 4, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna need some tissues, but it's definitely needed, and I suggest you watch it. Even if you have to watch it as a family, I suggest you watch it. I told my nephews they need to watch it. I don't know who else needs to watch it, but y'all need to watch it. Anybody with sons, young boys, you need to watch it. Anybody with older men, you need to watch it, because society is not made for anyone that does jail time to fit in properly and really succeed, unless you have a great support system for you when you get out. Work society, it really doesn't accept you. But that's all I got for When They See Us. But I really want people to see that. I don't care where you come from. I don't care where you're at, or how your family is, or if you have police officers in your family, or if your mom or your dad is a lawyer or a judge. You need to see it. You need to see how bad the loopholes when it comes to our quote-unquote justice system is just out here losing. and ruining lives. It's repeated. It's on the news every day. People doing time for 30 plus years for crimes they did not commit. And them getting paid $1 million or $2 million. What is a $2 million dollar payoff after taxes when you gave some prison system 30 years of your life? 30 years of your life. You can't pay for that. You can't pay for that. So everybody needs to watch it. Go watch it. Go support. I don't know. Ava, that was amazing. Amazing. Bye.
Bye.